Hello, my name's Dr. Siobhan Stevenson and I'm from Birmingham City University. In today's session, I'm going to talk about idea generation. So I'm going to look at how we get into the zone, how we get started, finding the story, tips on where to look for ideas and places to start. I'll also talk about storytelling principles and give you some final tips to take away with you. The first thing to say is idea generation is like a muscle. You can strengthen it and you can get better at it. If you set yourself a task and look to come up with 3 well-developed ideas a week, then by the end of the month you'll have at least 2 really good ones, and that comes with a 100% guarantee. All of our ideas come to us at different times during the day. Some of them will be more developed than others, but the more you practice, the better you get at coming up with ideas. One of the important things to say is not to just wait for inspiration to hit you. It's really important to create the right conditions that will help you spend some time thinking about your ideas and developing your ideas. So we call this getting in the zone. So to help students get in the zone, we suggest at BCU things like finding the right time. So perhaps you're more productive at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day. Some people find that they're most creative when they first wake up, and others find that things suddenly come to them as they're sleeping if they wake up in the middle of the night. It depends on what works for you. So if you're a morning person, a good time to spend some time thinking about ideas is in the morning, and if you're an evening person, doing it before you go to bed. The easiest way to do this is to just make sure that there are no distractions. That's why these are good times during the day, because at the beginning of the day you're well slept, well rested, so your mind is clear. You begin to think about the things you'll do for the rest of the day. That's when some of your ideas may flow. When you've had a full day and a busy day and you relax and you're tired, again, this may be a key point in the day for you where you become your most creative. For some people, going for a walk can really help them. It can help them develop their ideas, to take it from an initial start, to start to think about how they would turn that idea into action, how they would add to that idea, who they may talk to. Perhaps you could set yourself deadlines. So some people think they work better when they're under pressure. So they'll set themselves a deadline and they may say, by the end of Friday evening, I'm going to write 2 ideas down. And they work towards that deadline, and it helps them having that deadline. You will know how you work best. But all of these methods you should try, because there is no right or wrong way to generate an idea. And to have an idea means that your brain is working all the time. And this is something that, just like any muscle, you can work and you'll get quicker and better and ideas will flow. The easiest way to capture them is to have a journal. So some people tend to write notes on their phone. Other people may have a small book. And when they come up with an idea, they jot those ideas down in their book. If you find that it's more useful for you to have an electronic set of notes and an ideas file on your phone, then the phone is the best thing to do. It just depends how often you use your phone and how you work best. With journals, they're easy to take everywhere with you, and so you can keep a book that is specifically for your ideas, and that becomes something that you take everywhere with you and you write down when you get inspiration. It's okay that these aren't fully formed at that time. It's okay if you just jot down one word. It's something that you may need to mull over some time to think about, give time for that idea to grow and develop into something bigger. Another important thing that we tell people to do is to look for feedback. Try and get feedback from your friends. Brainstorm ideas with other creative people. If you have a group of friends that you feel very relaxed with and that you work well with, get together with them in a group. Find out what they think of your ideas. Bounce these ideas around. Although your initial idea may be a good one of your friends may suggest a different angle on it or something you haven't thought about. And that's when it unlocks your potential and it becomes something that you can take forward. So brainstorming is quite an important process in idea generation. We also suggest that finding the story within your idea is the most important part, particularly when it comes to production ideas. So what we mean by that is, what is your story becoming? What is the angle that people need to hear? And the most important thing when thinking about this is to define who your audience is. Without your audience, your idea just remains an idea. There has to be people who will listen to your idea, who will watch your film, who will look at your social media campaign, who will listen to your radio program. These are the people who will read your story. These are the people who are important to you. And every story you tell must be appropriate for the audience you tell it to. There would be little point for me to tell younger people a story about their lives because I'm older. So it would come from my perspective. It's important to know if you're creating a film for a young audience, it's important to target that audience and use the language that's appropriate to them. Use examples that are appropriate to them and use visuals that are appropriate to their age group. Without your audience, your idea will fall. You also need to find an interesting story angle that will translate into your chosen medium. So, as I said, that could be TV, it could be radio, it could be online, it could be film. But also challenge your own thinking on that idea. Ask yourself why this is important. Why is the story you're telling important? Why is it important that people hear this idea and understand this idea? And be honest with yourself. If you don't find this subject interesting, why should other people? It's really important that you are invested in the idea that you are making, because then you make a better product at the end of it, and a better film or audio documentary or radio program. If you're interested, others will be. That translates to the way you film. It's also okay to think small. So it's okay to take ideas from around you. Some of the most interesting people actually live quite closely within your circle. So they could be friends, they could be relatives, parents, grandparents, a person you know who lives on your street. Everybody has an interesting story to tell, and it's okay to start with the people around you. So the most important stories and the easiest stories to tell and the best documentaries are usually the thing that's right in front of you. So we ask our students to think about things, to focus on the people they know, and to ask themselves, do you have a cousin that has a strange pastime? Do you have a cousin that maybe collects cards or plays hockey for a particular team, and it's a weird mix of people in the team? Do you have a friend who had a near-death experience? That's an interesting story, and those stories are often overlooked. Or has your granny seen a ghost? Ghost stories are infectious and people love them. So if you know somebody that has a story like that, why not think about that and think about developing that as your idea? It's important as well to consider whether your story's been told before. So that doesn't mean you can't tell it again, but you need to consider how it's been told. You can certainly tell an old story in a new way, but you have to find the original first and make your story distinct. So you bring your own perspective to the story. Some things to consider if you're going to do this is perhaps the simplest angle to consider a story from is, are you involved? Is the story about you? Is the story about your journey to discover something? Or is the story about your daily life? If you intend to be the presenter of your story, can you involve yourself in that? Can you put yourself at the centre? It makes it easier for an audience to connect with you if you're telling the story and they're following your journey through that story. So, you shouldn't just consider the story itself, but you should consider also associated things. Do you need to add music? Will music enhance the story? So, for example, if we were telling a story about somebody that sells coconuts on the street and we were interviewing that person, we would use background noise to tell part of that story. So we may record the traffic. So there's traffic noise we can lay underneath that. Also, would we use sound effects? Is it important if your idea is about extreme weather, is it important to have claps of thunder so that you can hear the thunder in the background? It enhances your story. Also think about locations and contributors. The example I used about the street vendor and traffic noise, there would be little point in doing a serious interview in a noisy place because it detracts from the interview. Often it can be a distraction for the person who is talking if there is noise in the background. It's also a distraction for your listener. Anybody who is watching your film or video or TV program or radio program, if your main interview has been done in a noisy place, it will distract your listener. So think about location. It's a very important aspect. Also, another important thing we tell people is Google can be your friend. So if you have an idea and you're conducting research, going onto the internet and doing a search in Google can be really, really useful. It can help you go down what we call wormholes. It may take you off on a tangent, but it's a really important thing to do because it can add a different angle to your story and a piece of information that maybe you didn't think about before. So it's important that you do this. It's important that you you use this tool to see what's already out there. When you're checking to see if a story's already been told, and if we use the example of UFOs, if I wanted to know about films about UFOs, I might put a search into Google, into any search engine, and it would throw up examples of these stories that have been told before. It's worth investing some time into that and into researching your idea. That's how you develop and that's how you get better. So, some tips, some things to think about. Always be looking and listening to what's around you. It's important that you remember that interesting people make for interesting stories, but don't overlook the people in your immediate circle. because lots of us have parents or grandparents that have had very interesting lives, but maybe we've never spoken to them in that detail about their lives. We often have parents or grandparents that have travelled great distances across the country before they had their families, or they've travelled to different parts of the world. And we don't know that because we live with them and we talk to them every day, so we've never heard that story. It's worth always listening and always asking questions of interesting people, but also the people around you. Anniversaries are a useful way to kickstart a concept. So, for example, if you wanted to do a documentary about pens and pen nibs, you may look to the 50th anniversary of when the pen nib was created. That may be a good way to get into making your idea into a documentary or a film. Also, drawing on your own interests and your own passions. If you think about the things you're passionate about and do some more research into those, some of those may be interesting stories that you can tell in different media. Looking on social media can help. It can be good to use apps like Instagram or TikTok or Twitter to see what other people are saying, and you may get inspiration from those platforms. There may be a new craze that people are using from TikTok, and you may want to do a story on how your friends have started to use that craze, or people you know that may have got into this craze but something's gone wrong, something's not quite right. There's a story in there. Look at what other people are doing, and also ask the people around you. It's important to think about the university. The courses that are taught through the university are taught by skilled professionals. All of your tutors have experience, and this is one of the few times that you have people around you that will give you constructive criticism. They will help you. They will tell you the bits that you can improve on and how you can make your idea or your story better. So use them for that purpose. Ask them for their feedback. Also, ask your friends what they think. Ask people that you trust but that you know will tell you the truth and tell you really what they think about your idea. One of the most important things that we tell our students at BCU is you can't become a filmmaker, a TV producer, a radio documentary presenter or producer. You can't be any of these things if you're not curious. Being curious and trying to find stories that are totally unique is one of the most important things, the most important tools to becoming a media professional. The more curious you are, the more people you speak to and the more people you listen to will help that idea generation muscle grow. It will help you get stronger. So as media students, you always need to be looking out for stories, always thinking about how you could make a documentary or make a film or make a radio program, and how you could include the story and the idea that you've got. So, some final thoughts, some top tips. Firstly, and most importantly, is the one I just said: be curious. Make sure you have a journal or keep notes on your phone. Every time you're inspired by something and it makes you come up with an idea, write that idea down. It doesn't matter if it begins with one word only, that's absolutely fine. You can develop as you go along. As time goes on, you can develop that idea. It's important also to have a plan B. So how you think your idea may turn into a story. If it doesn't work out like that, it's absolutely fine. Have a plan B in your head. If you choose a broad subject for an idea and you wanted to discuss mental health as an idea, that's quite a broad subject. You have to find the story within that. So the story may be a group of people who use horses and they look after horses, and this helps them with their mental health. It calms them down, it helps them reflect. So the idea is about mental health. The angle or the story would be about those horses. Another example may be, again, if you wanted to consider mental health, how gardening can help people relax. Think about the overarching subject and the overarching idea, and then the angle or the story from which you'll tell that story. Have a backup plan. If that doesn't work, if you can't get the interview you think you need, is there somebody else you could interview? Is there somebody else you could talk to about your idea? These are important things to think about and important things to consider. So the top tips, final thoughts are: be curious, brainstorm and bounce your ideas around with your friends. Always seek feedback. So ask the people around you what they think of your idea. Spend some time researching your idea and all the different aspects of it. That will help you when you're brainstorming. You can begin with the overarching idea, and in your brainstorming process you can outline all of the different aspects of that idea, and then you can choose where you think that story is. Don't overlook the people around you. So think about who you know, who's an interesting person, and maybe go and start by interviewing them and see what ideas come from that conversation. Remember to keep your journal, so you can either write down your ideas or you can type up notes in your phone, and then develop those ideas, and hopefully what you will get from that is some really great original stories. And once you do your first story, the next one will come easier. That's all the advice I can give for you today. But I hope that was useful, and we hope that it works for Anna's students as well as it does